Hello and welcome to The Final Frontiersman, a YouTube channel about all things Trek. I'm Bill, and today I'm reviewing an expansion for the Star Trek Star Realms deck building game. This is Star Trek Star Realms Borg Invasion. So as usual with our reviews, we use the alert system. Yellow alerts for things we want to draw your attention to. Red alerts for the things we think are great or strong, and the rarely used black alerts for things that are groundbreaking. So let me jump into the small window and let's take a look at this game. As I said, this is an expansion. This is Star Trek Star Realms Borg Invasion. It's an expansion for Star Trek Star Realms, so you need to have the base game in order to use this expansion. The box says it's for 2 to 4 players, just like regular Star Realms, but actually it's for 1 to 4 players because there is a very clearly stated solo mode in the game, so you could play it solo with the Borg Invasion, but also I don't see why not. I could see this being a 1 to 5 player game because you have 1 player can control the Borg, 4 players controlling the regular cards from Federation, Dominion, Klingon, Romulans. I don't see why that wouldn't work. They don't mention it specifically in there, but it does say 4+ players, so I would think it would work. So technically it might be 1 to 5, definitely 1 to 4. So for this review, first we'll look at what's in the box, talk about the components, talk about how this plays as an expansion for Star Trek Star Realms, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. So starting off, what's in the box? First of all, there is a new type of card called Gambits, and I'm giving Gambits a red alert. Gambits are 2 cards. Every player gets 2 cards shuffled, dealt to them randomly at the beginning of the game. You could reveal them immediately or whenever they come into effect. Some of them are 1 use only, some of them have persistent effects, but these are 2 additional little abilities that you have in the game that you'll have from the beginning. You don't have to wait to buy cards from the trade row in order to have access to some powers. You automatically start the game having a little bit extra to do. None of the powers are super overblown or too strong, and honestly, some of them seem to be clearly more useful or just better than others. So they're not even across the board, but they do give you a little bit of a boost, a little bit. Some things like maybe add 1 to damage, so some might be reduce 1 to damage, some may affect your purchasing power, other little abilities like that. I'm not going to go through them all. These are also, for the most part, much like the original base game, these are reskins of an expansion for the regular Star Realms called Gambits. Shocking, I know. So most of these are basically the exact same Gambit cards from the original Star Realms Gambit expansion. There are a couple exceptions to this. A couple other cards have different wording choices, but they are pretty much the same. There are also 2 specific Gambit cards for the Borg player themselves. So those are unique to this game as it is, and naturally only used by the Borg player. So Gambits, I think they're really cool because you don't need them just for the Borg Invasion expansion. These can be added to any game of Star Trek Star Realms. So I think these are something I'm going to use permanently every time we play. They don't change the gameplay much. There's no new rules you really have to teach other players or to remember. It's just 2 little abilities you get to keep in your back pocket and use from the beginning of the game. So I think that's cool, and that's why it gets a red alert, because they are always going to be useful. They're always going to be something you can play with every single time you play Star Trek Star Realms. So stand down, red alert. Next, you have the Borg board. They have a Borg player board, same size, same thin cardboard material as the board in the original Star Realms box. You basically put it at the top of the player board, and it sits there. So on the Borg board, you will see Borg board. I like that. On that board, you will see at the bottom of it, it has movement spaces for the Borg ship, and on the top, it has 3 sections. First, it says Forcefields. The middle says Collective, and the right side says Hive integration. I will explain what those mean when we get into talking about the rules in the next part here. but you have another board that's added to the table. Then you have Borg ships. There are 3 large size Borg ship cards. They have varying difficulty. So you have a sphere at the lowest difficulty, a regular Borg cube for medium difficulty, and you have the tactical cube as the most difficult one. Then there is a deck of Borg player cards when you are playing the PvP option for this instead of the cooperative option. So whoever's playing as Borg has their own special start deck, just like players have a start deck in regular Star Realms. Then there are specific cards for the Borg as well. They're used in either PvP or the cooperative game. The cards are Borg drones, Forcefields, and Hive integration cards. So those are the components. I will say one thing that I want to mention. It might just be my imagination, but these cards, they feel a bit thinner, to me at least, than the cards in the original Star Trek Star Realms. It just felt a little flimsier, not by much. I don't know if it's true, but when I was sleeving them, it really felt like they had a lot of give and they were bending way too easily. They didn't feel as thick as the original ones, and the original ones aren't that thick to begin with. So maybe it's just my imagination, but I thought I would point it out just in case you have the same experience. So that's what's in the box. Let's take a look at gameplay now. How does this affect Star Trek Star Realms? And if you don't know how to play Star Trek Star Realms, you could watch my review previously where we talk about it, or you could find a much better gameplay explanation video elsewhere on YouTube, I'm sure. But anyhow, let me focus on the solo/co-op mode first. In this mode, first, you and the other players, you will choose a Borg opponent, so a Borg ship that you want to play against, either based on the number of players, or you can choose the ship to adjust the difficulty to your liking. So smaller number of players is going to face the sphere, larger number is going to face the tactical cube. But if you want to play smaller number with the tactical cube for extra challenge, you're more than welcome to. But it does have a guide of how to break it down based on player count. The game is set up normally like Star Trek Star Realms for the regular players. You put the Borg board on the top above the player board. You line it up. You fill the trade row on the player board as you normally do. But then that's when things start to change. So the first thing you do after you put out those initial 5 cards, I believe, on the trade row, you take the deck of 30 Borg drone cards. And all the drone cards are identical. They have different images. I think there are maybe 5 or 6 variety of Borg drone images, but the cards are all identical. What they do is identical. You take the deck of 30, you shuffle that into the deck of trade cards of all the locations and ships that will be coming out that the players can buy. These are shuffled in. I think it takes the deck to like 105 cards, somewhere around there. So it becomes a pretty massive deck. It now has 70 plus regular trade cards and now 30 Borg drones inside there. So after you do that, you shuffle that, put that back in the trade spot. The Borg NPC starts the game. It's always player 1, and then you go clockwise around the table, back to the Borg. So on turn 1, first turn, it's slightly different due to the setup of what happens with the Borg player. So first thing that happens is the Borg ship moves. So it can move in one space in one direction, and it moves towards the most expensive card in the trade row. If it's tied, it moves to the closest one. If it's already on the most expensive, it stays right there. Then after it moves one space, or doesn't move, depending on the situation, it will assimilate the card in the trade row underneath it. What that means is you take that card out of the trade row, and for now, you put it on top of the Borg ship card. You just lie it on top of the Borg ship card. It's in the process of being assimilated. Then you check what faction that card is. So if the card in the trade row where the Borg stops is Federation, you put that Federation card on top of the Borg ship, and then you go to the Hive integration cards. There's a set of 4 cards called Hive integration, 1 for each of the 4 factions, Federation, Romulan, Klingon, and Dominion. You take the Hive integration card that matches the faction of the ship being assimilated, and you put that into play on the Borg board, on the right section on the top where it says Hive integration. This triggers an immediate effect that the Borg has, a global effect that it does based on the fact that it's assimilating a card of that faction. So it immediately takes effect, and it stays on that Hive integration space until the next Borg turn. So it's not every time a card gets, or a card of that faction gets assimilated. It's only once when it's not on the Borg board, it's put on and triggered. If another Federation card gets assimilated before that's removed, it doesn't trigger again. But if a Klingon card gets assimilated, then you would activate the Klingon Hive integration card by putting it on the Borg board, doing whatever it says. So keep that in mind. It's not every time. It's only once per activation. Once it's cleared off the board, then it can be activated again. So then you replace after that assimilation's done, you replace the missing card from the trade row as you normally do. And then the Borg does their attack. How does the Borg attack? So you would look in the collective space. That's in the middle of the upper row on the Borg board. You count how many cards are stored in the collective space. That is the value of the Borg's attack, and it will attack each player in turn. So it goes right around the circle. Turn 1, there's no cards in the collective, or there probably won't be. It should be no cards in the collective. So turn 1, it's a level 0 attack on everyone. Nobody gets hurt on turn 1, but the Borg's already in the process of assimilating, and it already has a Hive integration out that has done something not good. Okay, so yes, once the Borg are done applying the damage to every player, Borg turns finish, you go into the player turns and go in order. Player turns, for the most part, proceed as usual as in regular Star Realms or Star Trek Star Realms. You generate attack with the cards in your hand that you draw. You generate trade by the coins on the cards in your hand, and then you apply those effects as you see fit. So if you're buying, let's go to trade first. If you use your trade value to buy cards, happens just as usual. You buy the card from the trade row, put in your discard, you replace it immediately. Now, what happens if it's a drone that comes out? Because there's drones in this deck. So what happens is, if a drone comes out, you set it aside for you as a player for now, and then you replace again in the trade row. If it's another drone, you put that with the first drone, set it aside. You keep doing this until you hit a non-drone card, which then goes into the trade row as normal. After that, you take all the drones you just set aside, put them in front of you. You might have drones there already from previous turns, so they get added together. Now the drones are activated. At this point, you count how many drones you have in your play area, and then you check your discard pile. If you have at least one card in your discard pile with a cost equal to or lower than the number of drones in your play area, one of those cards is getting assimilated. It's going to be the most expensive card of equal or lower cost, equal or lower to the number of drones that you have in your play area. So for example, if you have one drone already in your play area, and then on your turn you get 2 more drones added in, because keep in mind, they're added simultaneously on a single draw. If you keep flipping drones, they are set aside until no more drone is out. Then you add all the new ones as a set in, and that full total is the new total that's triggered. So you don't do it one by one. So let's say you already have 1 drone out in your player area. You get 2 more drones drawn, and then they're added in. You now have a total of 3. Check your discard pile. If you have any card with a cost of 3 or lower, your starting cards don't count because they have no cost. If you have any card in your discard of 3 or lower, whatever the most valuable one is up to 3 gets assimilated. And as I said, assimilated, you put that card on the Borg ship, you check its faction. If that faction's Hive integration has not been activated yet, you take it from the pile, you put it on the Borg board, trigger its activation, and then the number of drones equal to the cost of that card are scrapped. They're removed from the game. This is not activated every single turn. The Borg drones don't activate every turn. It's only when a new drone or drones are added to your play area. So it's not as complicated as maybe I made it sound, but it's something you have to keep in mind when you have cards in your discard pile, that you might want to be careful the costs that are in there, considering how many drones you might have in front of you already. So that's one element of the strategy in playing this game. Okay, so after that, that's for trading. Now let's say you want to attack. Okay, you attack as normal, but of course you're not attacking the other players, you're only attacking the NPC Borg. And you attack as usual. You total up your combat value from all of your cards, and you apply that combat value. You apply it directly to the Borg ship, you lower its health. Sphere has 25, regular cube 50, tactical cube 75. You apply the damage, subtract it as you normally do, and that's that. Or is it? Of course that's not that. They're the Borg. So bad things start to happen even when you attack them. What are the Borg known for? They're known for adapting to the weapons that you use. So if you attack the Borg, you check which card of yours that you played to get the attack value, which card provided the biggest attack, the largest attack value. You check that faction, and whatever that faction is, the Borg activate one of their force field cards. So if I played a Klingon card that did the most damage out of all of my set, the Klingon force field gets taken from off the board, put on the upper left side in the force field section. The rulebook, let me just interrupt here for a second. The rulebook says these force field cards are double-sided. One side is grayed out, one side is colored. I think that's either a misprint or it's from a previous version of the game before it was finalized, because they're two-sided and they're both colored on both sides. You're not really flipping it to trigger it. You're bringing it from off the board and putting it on, so it doesn't need to be flipped. So just ignore that little comment in the book, in the rule book. It doesn't mean anything. If it's not on the board, that force field's not triggered, basically. So Klingon did the most damage. I put the Klingon force field on the Borg player board. What does that mean? What does that force field mean? That means terrible things. They have adapted to the Klingon frequencies from my attack. That means no other Klingon card is going to generate any attack value. None of my Klingon cards, none of the other players, no Klingon card is going to generate attack values. If they have an attack value on there, it's basically nil. It's nothing. It does not provide any attack while that force field is on the board. That's bad. That's very bad if you haven't figured it out by now. It's very bad. So if the next player does their attack and they have a Dominion card that does the most damage to the Borg now get the Dominion force field added onto it. So now, from that point forward, while those are out, Klingon cards aren't doing any damage. Dominion cards aren't doing any damage. Well, that's okay. We have our start deck of non-aligned cards. They have no faction. I'll just keep whittling away with those little things. Maybe buying Ferengi Decoras and bursting them, having them explode, trashing them, and dealing damage that way. not so fast, because although there is no faction, there is a non-aligned force field. So if the highest card to do damage is non-aligned, it has no faction, there's a force field for that too. Oh my god. So yeah, that's really rough. But the rule for that is once a fourth force field is added, or fourth or more in case, I don't see how a fifth would be added, but once a fourth force field is added because of an attack, at the end of that player's turn where the fourth force field card came in, all of the force fields are reset. Anyhow, it does get even a little worse than that. So you got force fields to contend with by attacking the Borg. So you might think, okay, well, let me just attack. I'll try to rescue a ship being assimilated, because you can go, instead of attacking the Borg directly, you can attack the ship that's being assimilated, or any of the ships currently being assimilated that are sitting on top of the Borg ship card, by using attack value equal to that card's cost. If you pay the attack equal to the cost, you get to take that card and put it into your discard pile as if you bought it with attack power straight from the Borg. That's it. But that also counts as attacking the Borg. So if you use any attack, that's going to be considered for what force field is triggered, which means Klingon ships still can't use their damage to rescue assimilated ships. Likewise, you can attack a drone. A drone only takes one hit, so 1 point damage to kill the drone. You don't want them building up in your area. Let's kill them, just 1 point damage. Bam, 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 they're dead. Good. But you're still attacking the Borg, so that is still going to be considered for force fields and generating force fields. So if you think, well, I don't want to attack the Borg directly because I don't want to get force field, I'll just kill the drones in front of me, you're still going to get force field because you're dealing damage to the Borg. So directly attacking them, attacking the assimilated ships that they're stealing, or attacking the drones are all attacks against the Borg. They are all going to be considered when looking for which force field to activate. Scary stuff. Scary stuff right there. So that's force fields. that's attacking. I'll get into my thoughts on that in a second. Once that's done, you go back one time around, you're back to the Borg player turn. It's the same, but there's one more step in the beginning now from turn 2 onwards. First, you remove all Hive integration cards that were placed on the Borg board during the previous round, so they're all reset. That means the next time that any ship is assimilated, that faction Hive integration card is going to be triggered again. Then you check for any assimilated ships sitting on the Borg ship. They are moved to the collective. As I mentioned earlier, the number of the cards in the collective is the power, the attack power that the Borg will apply to every single player during their attack step. So it grows more and more as every round goes on. If they assimilate one ship, they're getting +1 to their total power. If they assimilate 2 ships, that's +2 to the permanent, +2 to their total power. Once a ship is in the collective, in the middle of the board, it cannot be rescued again. The only way to stop it from getting into the collective is by attacking it while it's still in the assimilation process on the Borg ship. Once it's moved up, it's gone. It's now power for the Borg itself. It has made the collective stronger. So after that, everything still plays the same until one side wins, either the Borg or the player side. Now, there is player elimination in this game because you're playing a team versus the Borg. So if a player is eliminated, the Borg wipe them out, they are allowed to take any of the cards that they have and give one to a single other player by putting it in their discard pile. So consider it a parting gift to a player, wishing them well. If any player, at least one player, survives and defeats the Borg, all of the players win as a team, even the eliminated one. So it's humans versus the Borg. That's the solo/cooperative mode. Now there's also a PvP mode, so player versus Borg player, players versus Borg player mode. It's kind of like a boss fight battle where one player is controlling the Borg boss, the other player or players are going to team up just like in the cooperative mode to take down that player. It plays similarly, but there are some notable differences here. First, Forcefields and Hive integration cards work the same, just as they do in the cooperative mode, except the Hive integration cards have double sides. One side's for the cooperative mode, the other side is for the PvP mode. It changes their abilities slightly to adapt to whichever mode you're playing as, so make sure you have the card set on the right mode as a Borg player when you are triggering those cards. Drones are now no longer added into the trade deck. They are a separate side deck for the Borg player. The Borg player starts with their own 10-card start deck, just like the other players have theirs, but these are all Borg specific. They are not the same cards as same breakdown of cards as a human player would have in their 10-card start deck. These are where the drones get played. Some of these cards that the Borg player have allow you to send a drone, deploy a drone to a player of your choice, and then once you put a drone there, you do the whole search and trigger for assimilation things. So you can try to keep an eye on the discard piles of the other players. Try keep an eye on who has maybe no cards in discard, so you could start sneakily building drones up on their side. So when they do get an expensive card in their discard pile, you can hit it and trigger a large number of drones to assimilate. The assimilating rules still work the same. Goes on to the Borg ship. You minus the number of drones used with the cost of the ship, take them out, they go back to the player. Same as before. So that part's still the same, but the Borg player now has control of where they go, and you can strategize with how to trigger them. I would say the final difference, or maybe the big difference is, or maybe bigger differences, with the Borg ship. The Borg ship movement now is not tied to assimilation. That's mainly done primarily through the drone play, although there's other ways of doing it. But when you move the Borg ship, now it doesn't assimilate the ship that it stops at, that's underneath it in the trade row. Instead, it makes whatever card is under the Borg ship one cost more. So it makes it a little more expensive. You park that thing over the Enterprise, it now costs 9 to get. That's massive. So slight difference there. The Borg cards, though, when you assimilate, slight difference though, when you assimilate cards, player cards, it no longer goes into the collective. That's not your power. You now play attacks and trade just like a normal player does as the Borg. So you can spend trade cards to buy cards from the trade deck to assimilate it, and you can also play attack cards to build up your attack. So unlike with the NPC cooperative mode, you're not gradually building a massive amount of power that's hit every time. You are playing attacks and trade as a normal player would, and determining how you're spreading that amongst all the enemies that you have there. Those are the differences. Okay, so let me talk about my thoughts on this game. I think I can get out of the small window for now. So I apologize. That was a pretty long description there, but I kind of want to be thorough. It's not every last detail of the rules, but I wanted you to have kind of an idea of how different it is and what it adds to Star Realms or Star Trek Star Realms. So thoughts. First of all, what I love the fact that this makes it cooperative. Sometimes you don't want to be completely competitive. Sometimes you just want a cooperative game and you want a good challenge. Now Star Realms has the option for either, whichever way you want to play it. So I love that. Gambit cards, as I mentioned before, love having additional options, love having variety in my games that make every play a little bit different. This helps add to it. Gambits give you a little more flavor, a little more variety that keeps things fresh, keeps things interesting. So I love adding them to the game. Biggest takeaway I want to share with you: the Borg are hard to beat. It is a hard challenge There were, in my early playtests of this, my first few playtests of this, there were so many situations where I had nothing I could do on a turn. I didn't have enough trade to buy anything. I didn't have anything to attack because I was force fielded out. So there were a number of times where turns were just complete whiffs. The force fields have the ability to shut you down completely for rounds at a time. Think about that. I want you to think about it. I need you to consider the difficulty of this. I want you to think very hard about it. This is not just a challenge you jump into and like, hey, let's take on the Borg. This is a very difficult solo player cooperative mode to fight the Borg. So what it comes down to is strategy and a whole heaping ton of luck. Because as much as strategy might give you, and I'm going to get to that in a second, as much of an advantage that it might give you, luck also plays a huge role. This is a deck building game. It's down to the shuffle. It's down to the cards that come out. Let's say I'm attacking with Dominion, Federation, and I got my non-line, and I'm just hitting you. That gets a force field up immediately. So now my Federation does nothing. Then my Klingon does nothing. Then my non-aligned does nothing. And if the trade deck is not giving me a Romulan attack or a Dominion attack, it's not giving me a third option to actually break the force fields, I'm dead in the water. So the fact that you can't reset the trade row, you're dependent on hoping you get a variety of attacks coming out of the trade row, because if you don't, you're going to just lock yourself out of the battle immediately, and maybe all the players, depending on what they have. Even worse situation, and this happened before, we have, again, non-aligned you always have, so you're always going to be able to deal damage to them with that, and that's going to get a force field. That's the only thing you do. We got like Klingon, we got like Romulan, whatever. We have 3 types of faction. We got 3 force fields out there. No other attack cards coming out from the other factions. No other cards. Like Federation has a lot of health and has a lot of trade. Not so much with the attack. And they're not coming out. They're not coming out. Not coming out. We finally got one. Got an attack. Buy it. It goes into the discard pile. Don't you know that's the card the Borg assimilated? Takes it onto the ship. Yes, we could try to fight and rip it away from the Borg before it's added to the collective. But guess what? We're already locked out with our force field. So no, we can't. It's stuck there. We just sit back and watch it get assimilated. Our only chance of breaking the force field, getting taken away and obliterated by the Borg, making them stronger. So yes, luck plays a huge role in here from time to time. And you could find yourself in a very unfavorable situation. In fact, it was when I played it with my biggest group, it was our own Battle of Wolf 359, our own private Wolf 359, as we were getting pummeled mercilessly, unable to break through the shields, the force fields that the Borg had put up by adapting to us. It was hard to the point, or nearly to the point, of not being fun. And I could see the other players who aren't huge into board games, still board game players, and maybe not the biggest Trekkies, but still they care about it. It was not immensely enjoyable seeing all of your turns being destroyed, seeing all of your health being destroyed. We finally did turn it around, and we did put up a valiant effort, but we were destroyed. We were obliterated in the end. We lost. In fact, every single playtest that I did, testing out the game and trying out all the different things up to that point, were all losses, and they were all massive losses. Even when I was able to finally start mounting a comeback, it only took 1 or 2 more rounds before the Borg wiped us out due to just how strong they were at that point due to the assimilations. So, as I said, it was kind of to the point of not being fun, but we sat back and we reflected on it. We're thinking like, my God, do we need to add some house rules? Do we need to homebrew something? We talked about a few ideas. Like, I think in the next game, let's change this rule. In the next game, let's not use this rule. I don't think it's balanced. I don't think we were talking through a lot, but then it occurred to me, there has to be a strategy. There has to be something maybe we're not looking at. We talked it through and we came up with a strategy that it sounded like, yeah, that might actually have a chance. That might actually be the way to go to beat these suckers, to beat these Borg. So tried another playtest run and used a strategy. It was close, but it worked. 2-player. We won. Both players still alive. 1 player barely, but we were both still alive. The strategy worked. So, because of that, red alert. I'm saying this is, and my friends that I play with who play track agree with me, and I think they were the first to bring it up. It's insanely thematic. Hear me out. Because as my friend said that I play with, like, they are ridiculously hard to the point where you feel it's impossible to beat them. But shouldn't that be exactly how difficult the Borg are? Isn't that what you expect when you're fighting the Borg? Look at us. We did our own Wolf 359 battle. 4 of us, 3, I can't remember at that time, 3 or 4 of us going in, fighting against the Borg, and we were wiped out. We thought, let's just go at it. Let's hit them as hard as I can. Stop them before they can stop us. Nothing. Even our rally to come back was cut short. We were dead. How's that possible with all we were throwing at it? But then just like in Star Trek, just like in lore, we lost a battle. We were destroyed. We went back to R&D. We researched. We thought about. We developed our own Defiant project. We developed our own Sovereign classes, our own Akira. We were planning to fight the Borg. We came up with our strategy to fight the Borg. Sadly, we didn't actually develop our own ships. But still, we developed what we needed to with our intelligence, with our experience of all the losses that we suffered, and we came back with the strategy, and it worked by the skin of our teeth, but it worked. And isn't that what you want a battle against the Borg to be? So, ultra thematic. It's how the Borg should be, but it might not be your cup of tea. Stand down, red alert. So this might be something to take out when you really want to have a good challenge with your friends. Go and see if you could take down the Borg and move up sphere, cube, tactical cube. See if you could take them all down. Keep refining your strategy. Keep planning and synchronizing with the other players until you get down. And when you get that victory, it feels so good. So this is not going to be for everyone. People who don't like cooperatives, people don't like ultra difficult level games, they might not have fun with it, but it's worth it for the Gambit cards for sure, and it's worth it just to have a way of making you think outside the box of regular Star Realms, because that game, it's fun. As I mentioned, I love the gameplay. It's so easy and smooth, but it kind of puts you on autopilot, and you can't take down the Borg with autopilot. So I love the fact that it made me think of a deep strategy for a game that otherwise does not require that much deep thinking. So for that, I'm grateful for it. I'm not going to be playing the Borg expansion a ton, but when it's time. I'm going to be happy to break it out, sit down, work with my friends, and try to take down the tactical cube. That's going to be something. But still, that's our goal. So that's my review. I thought it was interesting. It was a challenge. One more last thing before I go out. I do, like I said, I think the cards were a little bit flimsier, but also I think the rule book was a bit on the sloppy side. It was not as clearly explained as it should have been. And with how small the rule book is, I think that that's not cool, you know? I mean, it doesn't have a lot of pages. A lot of the mistakes and omissions should have been caught. That was disappointing, but whatever. Anyhow, it was fun. It's a huge challenge. You will have to decide if that's the kind of gameplay you want. But for me, it was a pain to suffer through, but I appreciated the experience, and I'm looking forward to the next challenge. So that's it for today. As always, thank you for tuning in. Stay safe out there, my friends. Live long and prosper. Peace and long life. I'll see you next time.